Lisa Fish, where are you from?
Originally from Topsail, CBS, Newfoundland. Born in the Goulds in St. John's, but actually lived 10 years of my life in Alberta, as lots of Newfoundlanders do.
So the majority of your life in Canada was in
Newfoundland.
Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And so just to explain, Newfoundland is the whereabouts in Canada is Newfoundland?
So East Coast, a little island off the east coast of Canada, and it's obviously Newfoundland and Labrador. So Newfoundland is the island part of it, and Labrador is part of the mainland.
So are you from a city, a town, a village?
Just outside of St. John's. So St. John's is the capital city, and we're about 20 minutes outside of that. So in the Bayman area, even though it's just on the border of St. John's and Paradise.
And you lived there for how long? How many years?
I was there 13 years because I moved back when I was 10, but obviously Newfoundland born and bred, and then we moved to Alberta when I was a child.
So if you're here in Harlow, so when you're describing your hometown, what do you say to people?
Oh my God, it's beautiful. And Topsail really is. It's very much like a valley. It's off the Atlantic, so it's got a beautiful Topsail beach. It's got a big bluff that people climb up and stuff. When you look out on the bay, you've got Bell Island and Little Bell Island. And I was actually there for Easter, funnily enough. So I hadn't been there for almost 2.5 years, and I managed to get home for Easter time. So that was amazing. And it's obviously, it is a very rugged place. Lots of, they do call it the Rock for a reason. It is very rocky and stuff. But Topsail CBS is very much a beautiful, it's on the coastline, so you've got all the coastal drives as you go around. Easy location to St. John's. It is one of the ideal places to live.
And the population of St. John's is?
It's about 500,000 is Newfoundland. St. John's, I think, is about 150,000, but you've got St. John's and surrounding areas. So even though it's not got a huge population, the bulk of the island lives on the Avalon Peninsula, because obviously that's where the capital city is. That's where lots of things, things are going on, kind of thing. So that's your main population.
And just go back for a second about you going back to Easter. How long does it take to get there from Harlow?
Well, normally, if you're flying just through Halifax and stuff, because originally we had a direct flight, so you could be home in like 5.5 hours. They've changed that because not enough Newfoundlanders were flying this way, or flying from Newfoundland. So they've changed that to go through Halifax in the summertime, so from May. So when I go home this summer, it'll take me about 10.5 hours. When I went to Easter, there aren't any flights to Halifax. You have to go through Toronto. So coming back took us about 23 hours. Going there took us about 18. So it just kind of depends on your flights.
You went back Easter.
Yeah.
What do you miss?
It's the family more than anything. I mean, Newfoundland as a location, obviously, it's quieter. Where we live, it's not as quiet, obviously, because it is next to St. John's and stuff like that. So there's lots of things to do, but it is family. Family is the big draw. I mean, Newfoundland community is massive, and there are things to do, but it's not like, where you've got London on the doorstep and you've got theme parks and you've got zoos and you've got day outs left, front and centre. Newfoundland, the weather doesn't obviously allow for that necessarily. So you do, become used to just hanging out with people. So you have your kitchen parties or you have your nights in and stuff like that. So my thing is very much my parents and my sister and her family. And then my extended family, which I have a lot of aunts and uncles, because my dad's one of 6 and my mom's one of 7. So aunts, uncles and cousins. So for me, it's the people. Newfoundland itself as a place is wonderful to visit, but it's very much the people that make it.
You mentioned weather.
Oh yeah, it's huge. Snow for a long, lot part of the year and stuff like that. So obviously, but being a Newfoundlander, weather is just something that you deal with, and you're very used to it. You're very used to the snow, and it's just part of it. And I think your life with your family and stuff is very much integral, because you can't necessarily do as much, or when you are doing stuff, you are very outdoorsy because of what there is to do. You know what I mean? Unless you're going to the mall all the time or going out to eat all the time. Other stuff to enjoy yourself does need to be quite outdoorsy.
What was the name of your school?
Oh, I was, St. Thomas of Villanova, and then I was at Holy Spirit High. So we were still very much the denomination schools at the time. They're not denomination anymore, but they've kept the names. So I went to a Catholic school.
And is there did you go to Catholic school? Is there a big Catholic community where you're from? Or?
Yeah, so it's we have a lot of Roman Catholics, but we also have a lot of Pentecost, so Church of England as well, so what we would call United, and then Salvation Army as well. So it's a huge Christian community, but it's always been like the Roman Catholics and the Pentecostal has been the major influences, and I think most communities have Pentecostal, Roman Catholic, and United churches. So they're quite, very religious based. Although not as much, because obviously, like everywhere, religion tends to be kind of being less and less.
And did you say after 13 years you moved?
Yes. Yeah. So I moved when I was a year old to Alberta because my parents need to work, as Newfoundlanders tend to do. You know, Newfoundlanders being very nomadic because there isn't the work in the province. So the population stays quite stable because people leave. You know, a lot of people I know my age are living away from home because there isn't the full-time jobs. And there hasn't been for years. So when my father was my age, my parents were my age, they did the same. But when I was 10, my grandparents had gotten ill, and they decided that they wanted to be in Newfoundland, they wanted to be closer to family. And so then I spent the next 13 years of my life in CBS, you know, and really got to know my extended family and became very close to everybody, because obviously I didn't see them very much in the first 10 years.
And are you aware of your own history, and that you know, people talk about, you know, the people that emigrated. Well, here we are in Harlow, and you're from Canada, but you're aware of antecedents of where people came from?
Vaguely, I know my grandparents. My grandfather was a Hocko, so we think that there was some kind of like German descendants, you know, way back in the, you know, and a lot of it is very Irish. So we had Ezekiel's, funnily enough, as well, and we had Thornhill and Marshes. So it was very much Irish, English kind of. So, you know, people coming over in the potato famine and stuff like that, coming over with the fisheries and things like that. So our background is very English-Irish kind of stuff. So I don't think we've ever delved into exactly where everybody's come from, but we have general ideas of what the lineage is.
And is there a typical accent? I often on BBC listen to Lise Doucette, one of the BBC correspondents, and very distinctive. Is it Canadian but with Orcadian influence, French influence? So likewise, is there a typical accent where you're from?
In Newfoundland, you'd hear Irish.
Yeah.
So you will hear Irish first and foremost, and I often get mistaken for being from Ireland instead of, you know, people don't hear necessarily Canadian. Although when I go home now, they don't hear the Canadian at all. They hear just English. Whereas when I say I'm from Newfoundland, I go, really? Kind of because I've got, you know, obviously the accent that I've developed over here. But over here, people will still hear the Canadian influences. But because of Newfoundland's roots, it's still very Irish. You know, they have had some American influences, but obviously being an island, you've been able to retain your linguistics, you know, the dialect and stuff like that. And particularly if you go around certain communities, the accents will be heavier depending on where you go. If you go down south, it can actually be more of a Scottish burr. But a lot of it is very, because the music is Irish, you know, the dancing is Irish, and the food is very, you know, meat and potatoes, Irish type stuff. So Newfoundland is still very much influenced by that Irish factor, you know, by the fact that you're Irish descendants, basically. And when you go to Dublin, it seems to be like another home because it's very much like Newfoundland.
And did you have, when you mentioned dancing, what was the culture when you were growing up? Was it very much, you know, was it dancing and music? Or?
Oh, always dancing music. And you have like your sing-alongs and shanties on a Sunday morning, you know, it would be the Irish music. So it would be, you know, whiskey in a jar and stuff. And then the Newfoundland music coming out of that. So some of my favourite bands from home are like Celtic Connection, the Irish Descendants, Masterless Men, and they're all very the Irish influenced music, or they would call in Newfoundland, you know, the Newfoundland music and stuff like that. So you would have that huge influence. And Newfoundland has always been about music, and it has a huge music scene. There's always somebody playing. You'd have a kitchen party and someone would whip up music, and that's very much, you know, how it still is, you know, that you would do have, you know, you have that musical influence and stuff.
And so finally, taking us to Harlow, what is Newfoundland in your own home? Are there things that people would say, hey, she's from Canada, you know, she's from Newfoundland?
Hugely. Yeah, I mean, we're wearing like maple leaves and stuff and, you know, things like that. But in my home, particularly Christmas time, Newfoundland has a tradition of mummers, and so I have even my Christmas tree is full of Newfoundland ornaments. So Cabot Tower, you've got, you know, saltbacks houses, particular things that everybody would see, you know, in Newfoundland. And even our placemats, we've got, you know, of Cabot Tower, not Cabot Tower, sorry, but Signal Hill and Cape Spear. So my house is little, there's always little snippets of Newfoundland here and there. You know, in the some of the decorations, some of the things I bring back from home. They've got things from Jelly Bean Row and stuff like that. So, and my son has grown up, he's 7 now, goes to Newfoundland every summer. So we spend 4 or 5 weeks at home every summer. So he becomes very much immersed in being Canadian and being a Newfoundlander, which I think is really important. So he knows his roots as well.